Good evening, everyone. My name is Corinne Villavasso. I will be the facilitators tonight for today's discussion. We're going to call this meeting to order. It is 7:03 p.m. It's March 9th, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Board Membership. If the Spanish language interpreters Thalia and Gabby can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation.
Muy
Bienvenidos
buenas.
todos.
Ok, siga, Gaby.
Gracias. Bienvenidos todos. Hoy va a ser una cita y reunión sujeta a las leyes de Oregón y el municipal de Oregón. Y hay interpretación en español esta noche. Solo tienen que escoger donde están los 3 botones al lado y escoger y tocar ese globito y te da la opción de ir al canal de español o inglés. Gracias.
Thank you. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Mary and Dana. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov. To ask for other access assistance, including interpretation in any other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State law, and it is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We like to be clear that all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, we like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered both, the question and answers will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access the feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of the screen. At this moment, I would like to turn it over to our co-chairs. For the PAC currently uses the land acknowledgement on display at City Hall, which is.
Good evening, everyone. Obi Igwoju, one of the co-chairs. Thank you all for being here tonight. So once again, the PAC currently uses the land acknowledgement on display at City Hall, which is, we acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapia, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people in our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Commissioner Obi. At this time, we will ask that we all take a look at the community agreements. Part 1. Thank you. We can go to the second portion of the community agreement. Okay, by show of hands or with your hand raise emoji, can you please commit to say that you do commit to the following community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our colleagues in collaboration if needed. Thank you. At this moment, I would like to pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
Thanks, Corrine. This meeting is a part of the Police Accountability Commission structure and details phase of work, which focuses on the form of the new system. Future phases of work will develop how the new system relates to the rest of city government and the transition plan from our current system to the new one. The commission will present all proposed changes to City Council later in 2023 for their consideration and approval. This slide shows the outcome documents for the structure and details phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. This subcommittee focuses on how the new oversight board's membership will be structured, including appointment, possibility of reappointment, term length, criteria for selection, and training and onboarding. This slide is the current project plan for the structure and details phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It will be updated as needed throughout this phase of work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to the form of the new system. Today's meeting is part of the light blue box with the red border near the middle of the screen. Following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the Police Accountability Commission. We'd like to highlight this subcommittee's next meeting date will be confirmed the next week and will be later this month, either on the 25th or the 27th. The next full commission meeting is on Thursday, March 30th. And lastly, there is a Police Accountability Commission listening session and Q&A for Tuesday, March 14th. And virtually, that will be virtually. And then there will be another community listening session and Q&A on Wednesday, March 22 during the middle of the day at Concourse Coffee, just east of the Burnside Bridge in the Kearns neighborhood. And today's meeting agenda includes time for members of this subcommittee to report back on what we've learned and developed since meeting on March 2nd. After that, we will discuss items for inclusion in the eventual document this subcommittee will be developing and referring to the full commission. The draft Police Accountability Areas of Agreement on board membership. There will also be public comment as well as time for the subcommittee to plan out its work from now through its next meeting later this month.
Thank you, Co-Chair Teresa. Now we'd like to start the discussion. We will now let each member of the subcommittee talk about anything they've learned or researched or thought about from the last meeting on March 2nd through today. Co-Chair Obi, would you like to go? I see your hand raised. Thank you. Would you like to share?
Yeah, well, once again, thanks for everyone for being here. In between, it was great that we were able to start off our first session at the board, with staff membership as well, or oversight staff, new name for it, oversight staff as well. And now second, like we're alone, but I know there's going to be some other members, at least in the audience, who are here too, and they can always receive their input. From I think the goal today in my mind, and I think Tirsa and I agree on this as well, is just to get more generalized information and then hopefully in the end split up and get things hardened to paper, submit them since we have a kind of a longer break, and then move forward in the next two meetings to solidify and of course refer to the overall group. I would like to say thank you to specifically Commissioners Dan and Debbie, who have sent us some really good information, a lot of it coming from San Diego. That's kind of done the back end, but we'll likely go through that or some of those documents as well. I think a lot of that can be translated to what we end up doing for Portland. In regards to board membership, there's a training of board membership too, or some really good Excel or documents from there, and just some of the onboarding stuff for board members. So I think that's what I wanted to say, and I think that's where most of my points will come from later on. But yeah, definitely open for everyone to discuss, and then hopefully we can get into documents later. And thanks.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Co-Chair Tirsa, do you have anything you would like to share?
I mean, just as how we were slightly discussing at our last meeting, we were looking at a document that combined what pertained to the new, what will be the new board from what we had discussed and agreed in the previous phases of work. So as Obi mentioned, we will be going over those documents so that we can discuss and see what stands out and what we would like to include once we start beginning our draft document.
Thank you. Commissioner Casey, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to share at this moment?
Certainly, thank you. One of the things that I think really came out of our joint meeting that we had last week that I've been thinking about a lot is this relationship between the board and the staff, and particularly sort of trying to find a balance of not putting too much on the members of the board and acknowledging that we want them to be community members who can maintain those community connections and relationships, but at the same time making sure that they feel empowered to sort of be the guiding force of the board, and to make decisions based on the information that is being provided to them by the staff. So I don't have an answer to that, but I think that tension is kind of one of the things that is driving my thinking in this stage of how do we make sure this is a job that they can do, and at the same time make sure that they have all the resources that they need to feel like they can do it.
Thank you. Do you have any other commissioners here that would like to share on what they've learned throughout this process? Commissioner Sophie? Commissioner Angie? You have something you would like to share?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I was having a hard time finding the hand raising thing. Yeah, and along the same lines as Commissioner Casey, I think that I want to really think about how we can empower this board to feel passionate about this job, because I think the passion that this actual commission has kept us going through really grueling hours of work. And I know that it was very hard to get through that, but I want to find, I would really love to sprinkle that magic onto the board that we're trying to make up, but I don't know how to do that. So, there's a lot of brains here.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Commissioner Cameron, you have something you would like to share or add?
I don't think I have a whole lot to add to that, but just everything everyone said, I agree. We got a lot to look at, and very excited to hear what we come up with.
Thank you. I see Co-Chair Obi has his hand raised. You have additional information you would like to share at this moment?
Yeah, I just want to echo Co-Chair and Commissioner Casey's points about how to empower the board in a responsible and community-oriented way. Additionally, the member of the current board who spoke, who was in the audience in the combined meeting last week, kind of relayed the sentiment that there is a bit of an issue. We all want to be equitable. That's just one of the things that we're 100% stand by. But there is a little bit of tension between getting too close in regards to the board and the staff, and not trying to be too hierarchical, but not trying to be too even. And definitely want to just make sure everyone remembered that point too, as we kind of move along in our ideas.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Anyone has any other additional comments that they would like to share before we move on to our next discussion topic on the items for inclusion in the draft PAC areas of agreement on board membership? Okay. We're going to move along to our next topic of discussion, which is discussion on items for inclusion in the draft PAC areas of agreement on board membership. Co-chairs, you have anything you would like to add at this moment or discuss?
I think we're going to read through them, and then we're going to read through them thoroughly through this document. And then if anyone would like to pause, if anything stands out, or so that we can have a discussion. And this is, the mandate of the subcommittee.
Staff has raised their hands.
Sorry, disregard, apologies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, co-chair.
Okay, mandate of the subcommittee, so agenda and scope, board membership. So we will design something that, this is what we will be working on. Number of members in the board, B, the qualifications of the new board members, C, recruitment, D, paid, whether they will be paid or unpaid, E, representation of specific impacted communities, F, onboarding process and training. Number 2, selection and replacement of board members, A, appointment process, B, term length and renewability, C, training requirements, D, quorum, and E, removal requirements. So these are the mandates for our subcommittee. And then this is what council has assigned from resolution 37548 exhibit A. And that is the commission shall define as necessary any terms below, or shall include and refine those definitions already defined below. The commission is authorized to provide other definitions as it deems necessary. And so for this subcommittee, right now we have for cause. So we will aim to define for cause, for what reasons a board member can be removed. And then organizational details. So appointment of a director and professional staff are required by the charter amendment. Other details are required about how the system will be set up. So size of the oversight board, the initial and replacement selection, method to ensure board membership and compensation. And so this is just an overview. We can move on to the next. And then parameters of the Police Accountability Commission's work must fit within. So Charter Section 210, nature of the board. Board members shall be appointed by approval of council to a term of years established in city code. Members may not be removed from the board prior to the completion of their term, except for cause. And then I'm going to jump to Section 21003, restrictions on board membership. People currently employed by a law enforcement agency and their immediate family members are not eligible for service on the board. People who were formerly employed by a law enforcement agency are not eligible for service on the board, which we've discussed before. And then Obi, would you want to jump in?
Absolutely. And then we have relevant goals and PC values and goals and matching up. So kind of similar to actually our own group, but the value, like what do we want? The new system create and embody. And you can see in those read the values down, equity and inclusion, anti-racism, harm reduction. We scroll down just a little bit. And then being community-centered. And then, yeah, I won't read all of these, but it's basically things that we've discussed before, like how are we going to achieve them and like what specific things in our hiring process or maintenance process of board membership is going to fit in new accountability system to reach all these things that we strive to have both now and in the future. And then below, if you scroll down, it'd be the PAC areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland is related to this. So for inadequate resources for community oversight, the system has opportunity for civilian staff and community members to participate in holding police accountable. Volunteer members give their time, resources, and emotional labor without many resources offered in return. The commission heard from members of the Citizen Review Committee, or CRC, detailing the barriers they've experienced to participating meaningfully. The system also relies on City Council to make decisions when they are not specialists in this type of work. So bold statement. The current system relies heavily on volunteers and then does not provide them with sufficient support. Specifically, board compensation, civilian oversight is provided by community members who serve on a volunteer basis and do not receive compensation other than limited stipends. Time, civilian volunteers often have other commitments, but the system is not built around understanding their limited time. As a result, civilian volunteers are asked to handle large case files and large caseloads on short timelines. Additionally, the brief window for submitting comments on PPB policy and directives is also a barrier for advisory committees that meet only every month or two. Training. Civilian volunteers have asked for more training, but training resources are not always available. As a result, civilian volunteers do not receive sufficient ongoing training. And then mental health. Doing civilian oversight, including reviewing alleged police misconduct, is taxing on the emotional and mental health of volunteers. Community members who volunteer as part of Portland's current police accountability system do not receive adequate mental health support. This inadequacy is exacerbated for those who, due to their own lived experience, may be more affected by the work of civilian oversight. Yeah, and do you guys want to, I mean, we just read a lot in these past few pages. Anyone want to pause for discussion or anything that spurred any discussion out of what we've read so far?
Yes, this is a great time for us to pause and have a brief discussion around what just was presented. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated and remember that we will use a weighted stack in our discussion. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Would the co-chairs like to begin this discussion?
Yes, I can. I think what stood out for me, like in number 18 from the Police Accountability Commission areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability is specifically the time and mental health piece, since we have yet to figure out whether these people will be, the new board members will be paid, or whether they will receive a stipend, and how much time commitment and how much is expected of them for training to be on the board. So that's what stands out for me, mostly because mostly wanting board members to be able to participate in a manner that is equitable across board members.
Thank you, Co-Chair Teresa. Co-Chair Obi?
Yeah, thank you. I also agree with Co-Chair Teresa about kind of the time and also the board compensation. I'm going to bring in one of the statements from the Q&A section. Once again, Mr. Delgado, and thank you for continued participation in our meetings. But the statement as read says, I think some advisory bodies receive stipends, but CRC and PRB volunteers receive no stipends. We used to get snacks as a second sentence. And I think that would definitely be a barrier. I mean, having participation in a system that works is going to require effort. You know, I'm glad that it's mentioned that like mental health support is one thing, but I do believe that some form of compensation or stipends is going to be important to retain a staff that has a drive to do this work one way or the other. I know we're looking into the manner of it, whether that's, you know, a paid position versus kind of like a jury duty type paying thing, or stipends at specific times. But I think that is important to look at, and we'll have to work on the nuances. I will admit that I have never been an employer for the most part, never been really an employer, but it's one of those things that we'll have to look at to make sure that when we can obtain a staff that abides by the things that we want to, as well as like really gives, not their hearts, but gives like a really good devotion to this work.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Commissioner Angie, do you have anything you would like to add or discuss?
I appreciate what Commissioner Obi just said. I'm just kind of thinking it over in my mind, in that, you know, whenever you hear about surveys of what keeps people in their jobs, it's not always raises that matter. It's the attaboys, the appreciation of what their work is. I don't know how to keep that going though. And, you know, I kind of feel like sometimes even on this commission, we're kind of in the shadows and we're not, you know, whatever. And that's totally fine, because all of us have a lot of passion for this job, but I don't know what that attaboy can be for these volunteers. You know, I'm not really sure what it is, but it's maybe something to think about, because the monetary amount that you know, as a stipend isn't enough to keep people in. It's enough. I mean, we can have well-paid staff members, but then is that what, you know, we were kind of talking about that too, about, you know, we don't want the staff members leading everything. We want these people to have passion for their jobs. We want them to feel, or for their commission, we want them to feel appreciated for their work. And I'm not sure how we can do that, but we might want to, we might want to talk about that and see if there's a way to put that into what we're trying to come up with. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Casey, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just two quick thoughts. The first is I really feel like this is a good argument for having a large enough board that the work is able to be spread out well across the board. I mean, I think in an ideal world, you would have a large enough board that any individual board member would only have to come to a meeting maybe once a month, but you would have enough people that they could then still be meeting regularly and moving through complaints. So I kind of lean towards having a large board that meets in part to review complaints and then only comes together as a whole for sort of more major board policy decisions. And then the other thing that I was thinking is in terms of people who work, people who have childcare needs, and people with disabilities, I think having remote options for the board is really important. As I think we've sort of seen over the past few years, that can be a really big deal in terms of accessibility. At the same time, I think that it is worth considering that when you have people calling into a meeting like this, it can feel, as somebody who is complaining, like maybe they take your complaint less seriously or it's not important to them. So I think there is something of a balancing act to do there, but I think it is important to make sure that this process is accessible.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Cameron, would you have anything you would like to add at this moment?
Oh, yeah. Everything everyone's been talking about. Yeah, where am I with this? I'm a big proponent of compensating all the board members, because without money, it's a really tough thing to show up reliably. I feel like it's a huge incentive to show up. I mean, it's hard as it is for me to show up on something like this where and we're doing it in the evenings, we're doing it, it's so sporadic. If I was expected to show up kind of on a regular basis in normal work hours and do all that, I feel like I'd really, some sort of, not even minor, like a major compensation would be wildly helpful. Now I've forgotten everything else I was going to say, but we'll start there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners? Would you have anything additional that you would like to add? For those who are just joining from the public, please note that the Q&A option is available for you to submit questions throughout this process, and we will be holding public comment at the end. And we also have our ASL interpreters and also our Spanish interpreters as well. So just for those who are just joining us, I'd like to let you know that this is available. Okay, so I guess we can move on to the next.
Corinne, staff has his hand raised.
Yes, staff.
So just a quick note on these top level categories in this document. The last section was things that the commission has committed to doing. The values and goals include success criteria that the commission committed to evaluating this entire proposed new oversight board structure against. And then the section 18 that was just read was a barrier that the commission committed to addressing and rectifying. Getting into this category now is things that the commission agreed to consider when we got to that part of the agenda and scope, which is the part we're now in. So just a slight distinction there, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean that they are obligated to use any of it, but also they could use 100% of it. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Just wanted to clarify the reason for the categorization.
Commissioners, co-chair, you have anything you would like to add to what staff just mentioned?
No, I did not. Thanks for clarifying. And I was going to start reading the next section.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so oversight body selection criteria should reflect those most affected by policing, proposed by NACOL. NACOL proposes community-driven civilian oversight in which localities are both empowered and encouraged to create membership criteria for the oversight of law enforcement. These criteria should be based on the history and patterns of local policing to ensure that communities most impacted by policing are represented. Oversight should be conducted in part or in whole by the people most impacted by policing and their communities.
So I think this is probably appropriate for us to maybe tease this out a little bit and have a little discussion around this. Do we have any commissioners that would like to talk about this or discuss this? Seeing that there are no hands raised, we're going to go ahead to the next. What we like to do is pause at each section and allow for discussion, because it is a lot of information to digest as we move along. So just give us each an opportunity to discuss, if that is okay. Okay. Co-Chair Tirsa.
The oversight body is large enough to be representative of the city's population. Our larger board membership allows for more diversity, demographic, and geographics reflected in the community. It also allows the oversight body to create smaller panels for particular tasks and ability for particular tasks. And these are examples of what other jurisdictions are doing. And as Commissioner Casey Lewis, this is something that I'm hearing that he has proposed. And then the Police Accountability Commission also, and then counterexamples are in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco.
Any comments or feedback on section C1? The oversight body is large enough to be representative of the city's population. Any discussion?
I do. Sorry. I don't know if you saw.
Okay, sure. Commissioner Angie?
Thank you. I am just taking from our experiences in our commission, in that we have 20 people on our commission, yet so many of those slots are vacant at any given time. We don't want people to join the commission and then leave the commission, obviously, and in a perfect world, they wouldn't be. But by having more people on this new board, even up to 23 or 25 members, at least we are probably guaranteed, hopefully, to have, at a minimum, 17 to 20. So that is also something to take into consideration when we're thinking about the number of members that we want to have on this board. And that in a perfect world, we'll have that many members, but in most likelihood, it will be fluctuating all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Co-Chair Obi?
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with Commissioner Angie. And then also when we look at some of the functions of the board, I know we had discussed, and we'll further tease out, like having subgroups in the board, where maybe a group of people will look at a portion of a case, or a group of people will look at a case in general. And then there'll be a full board thing likely when they make recommendations for changes to city code or bureau practices. And I imagine that some are groups and then some are full, and I think we'll have to abide by quorum rules. I'd imagine that we have to abide by quorum rules unless we discuss that further. So I guess the numbers of people will play a part in both of those, both big and small. Yes.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Commissioner Cameron?
Yeah, I also agree with all that, with having a larger number of board members. Just it also with a possible larger pool of people, you get you get more chance of diversity in that pool. In case you're always going to have a number of people who can't show up or don't show up, or there's empty spots. And you're going to end up having diversity issues in people that show up or don't show up. And it'd be really good to have a larger group of people to, be part of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Cameron. Do we have any other commissioners that have any comment or additional feedback to this section? Okay.
Connie, Angie has her hand.
Oh,
you forgot, maybe?
I'm sorry, I forgot to take it down. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Co-Chair Tirsa? Would you like to continue to section C2?
Yes. I believe Obi has his hand up.
Co-chair Obi?
Yeah, thank you guys. I'll try not to slow everyone down. It's like anti what I am. But I was looking at the Q&A. There's been some good community involvement, but one actually of the new questions is by Commissioner Dan. And he mentions alternates for meetings, or alternates for government or city government processes to ensure that people are ready to step up if there are resignations or ready to step up in absences or prolonged absences. I think that's also something to consider as well, like alternates to this program. If this new board has many applicants and many people, I guess it's less exclusionary to have people as alternates who could be called or who we know might be able to get the nod for once someone's term ends. Once we define term limits anyway, but once someone's term ends, being like, oh, please, like, do you still want to be a member of the community board and like furthering the application too? That alternate idea is definitely something we should consider and drag on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Any more comments or feedback or questions or point of clarity before we move on to C2? Seeing that there are none, Co-chair Tirsa?
Or I can read one too. Sorry, Tirsa, like just maybe read the whole thing. I'll read a couple.
Okay. Co-chair Obi.
Don't let her do all the work. All right, C2, board member makeup should reflect the demographic and geographic diversity of the community. And as identified in Washington, D.C., San Diego City, and New York, taking into consideration sex, race, and geographical area. So the membership shall reflect the entire community. DC expanded their group to reflect more geographic diversity, and New York and Denver did similar.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion, feedback, point of clarity, or questions regarding C2 board member makeup? That it should reflect the demographic and geographic diversity of the community. Co-chair Obi.
Yeah, without saying right or wrong, the geographic makeup of Portland versus the racial makeup of Portland and the affected by police makeup of Portland probably vary. I don't have specific citations for this, but there probably is some variance too. So just once again, that's another thing to take in mind as well. It's like you don't want to, if even one of those things took the forefront of who we end up choosing to make up the board, it might actually not be inclusionary. So like always being forward looking and looking at all aspects of these things as we try and choose a diverse group of people to make up the board. And that's diverse in all facets of life. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Angie.
Thank you. And I agree with Commissioner Obi that trying to define the diversity of the makeup of the board is very hard because you don't want to be too prescriptive because then you might be leaving people out. So, that I completely agree with that, but it's also hard because I want to see that diversity in the board and I want to make sure it's not overlooked. So I'm not sure how we want to phrase that in a way that captures what we're hoping to see, but also doesn't exclude a group of people unintentionally.
Great, thank you so much, Commissioner Angie. Commissioner Cameron?
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering if it would be, instead of the way it's worded here with the diversity of our geographic area and all that, if it was those impacted by policing the most, having that as the the makeup of the group, focusing more on that as opposed to the just general diversity of Portland.
Staff or co-chairs, do we have any response to Commissioner Cameron's question or inquiry?
Yeah, I would just add that the language that Commissioner Cameron proposed is something that we could include once we begin drafting our areas of agreement. The language that we see here is language that came from the City of San Diego Charter, and we're using it as reference. So yeah, we can definitely include the proposed language on our draft.
Thanks, co-chair. Staff, you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, so the charter text, which was read a little bit earlier as parameters the PAC's work must fit within, do talk about here the provisions including so there's other factors. These are required factors, and then the items that are under discussion in the part we were just looking at could be layered on top of that. So it doesn't explicitly say those who have experienced over policing or the most heavily policed. Some of these may overlap with that in some way, but this is what it does say. And then beyond that, as other factors, the commission could establish other factors that would be in city code that would be considered by the appointing authorities.
Thanks for that clarification. Commissioner Casey. We can't see you or hear you, but we see that your hand is raised. Do you have anything you would like to add or have a question? Commissioner Casey. Okay. Do we have any more questions or comments regarding section C2? Co-chair Obi, would you like to continue to section C3?
For sure. C3, selection criteria for membership includes subject matter expertise. So identified Oakland, Denver, and Seattle. Consider as a makeup of board members. Examples include people with trial experience, civil rights or public defense lawyers, police accountability experience, and lived experience. Partial best practice in Seattle. The mayor, city council, and community police commission each appoint 7 commissioners. 2 positions are designated for public defense or civil liberties lawyers. All these are considered best practices. However, the police accounting commission identified practice to avoid. There's also 1 position reserved for a police union representative and 1 position for a member of the Police Management Association.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Do we have any feedback, comment, questions, or need points of clarification on section C3 selection criteria for membership includes subject matter expertise? Seeing that there are no hands raised, we're going to go ahead and proceed to the next section. Co-Chair Obi, are you going to continue here?
C4, designated alternates for oversight body. Alternates are selected along with active commissioners when openings occur. Yeah, I think we mentioned that, and great idea.
Yes, and I believe there was another statement or comment made in the Q&A. Oh, it moved in regards to alternates from a Debbie. Do anyone would like to address that, or?
Yeah, I'll read Commissioner Debbie's question. Debbie, thanks for coming. Yeah, and she basically said the commission's assigned for the charter transition to have alternate members, and at least on the salary commission that was recently appointed, they made it clear that alternates are expected to attend undertaken meetings. They just don't have a vote. So that is something that we might consider emulating in regards to having alternates in some capacity for board membership that could take over without too much of a hitch.
Okay, thank you. If we have any more questions or comments regarding section C4. If not, we are going to move on to D, selection of oversight board, D1. Co-chair Obi.
D1, the oversight body's members are appointed by City Council. And so that's identified in a couple of cities, but then I'll read the counter examples, which are practices to avoid. In Washington, D.C., only the mayor appoints members of the oversight body. And in San Diego County, the county chief administrative officer sends nominations to the board of supervisors who appoint review board members.
Any comment, questions, feedback, or point of clarification? Please raise your hand. Seeing that there are none, we're going to move on to section D2.
Okay, D2, members of the oversight body have to agree to certain terms upon appointment and reappointment. In San Diego, members take an oath and sign an affirmation upon appointment and reappointment.
I guess we can just go ahead and go to section D3.
Sounds good. So
Yes.
D3,
Yes.
you can scroll down just a tad bit. Thank you. Community members apply for oversight body membership, and applications are screened before passing them on to the appointing authority. So identified in San Diego County, Denver, Philadelphia, and Oakland. So applications in San Diego, applications are reviewed by staff who conducts interviews and ensures the DA does a background check on candidates. In Denver, applications are received and screened with interviews conducted by nominating committee. In Philly, applications are received and sent to the appointing authority. The city commissioners who select the appointees. And Oakland, responsibility for selecting commission members is shared between a community-based selection committee and city council, who must accept or reject the entire slate if recommended by the selection committee. However, the system does not apply to all members of the police commission. 3 members are chosen by the mayor, subject to city council approval.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. I see Commissioner Casey has his hand raised. Would you like to share?
I just wanted to flag, since it is stated, the portion about the background checks on candidates by the district attorney, I want to flag that we should probably make sure that we have a discussion about making sure that people who do have criminal history are not being screened out for that purpose alone, because I think that would sort of go against the idea of having representation from over-policed communities. I mean, I'm sure there can be some discussion about what screening criteria there should be, but just wanted to kind of put my marker down on that one.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Co-Chair Obi?
Yeah, completely agree. Commissioner Casey, or Co-Chair Casey. And also, it was just something in the back of my head that we talked about last round of subcommittees, but making sure that people with the background checks would be able to have access to like sensitive information who are board members too. So that kind of goes along with it. Like, you know, they have to have safe and secured access to things they can discuss and, you know, improve on the systems as they work, but make sure that people who might have had increased policing or a history of increased policing don't get ruled out from being helpful on these things.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Do you have any others that would like to share, comment, feedback on this section? Seeing that there are none, we're going to go ahead and move to section D4.
Okay, D4. Oversight body members are given training to exercise their duties on behalf of the public. Identified in San Diego County, San Diego City, Los Angeles, and Philly. In San Diego County, oversight board members are trained on government code, rules, public meeting laws, state laws, officer rights, disciplinary process, police training, constitutional and civil rights law, collective bargaining agreements, diversity and inclusion, and community perspectives on law enforcement. In Philly, system of process being implemented for our civilian review board members to receive training on police law, investigations, criminal justice partners, the DA's office policies, procedures, state constitutional law, community and civil rights organizations.
Okay, staff, I guess we can move down. Yes. Before we go into E, terms and removal of oversight board members, I want to make sure that we have, we can take a 10-minute break before we get into section E, and to also make sure that we have any additional comments or questions regarding section D before we go out for break. I see Commissioner Angie has her hand raised. Commissioner Angie?
Thank you. I appreciate in Philadelphia that it says that the system and process of being implemented requires civilian review members to receive training on police law, investigation, criminal justice partners, policies and procedures. I do want to point out the fact that this new board is supposed to be redefining how policies and procedures are going to be implemented. And I don't want the training, I don't know how to put this into, you know, whatever training that we're going to design, but I don't want the current policies and procedures to overshadow what the new thought process of what the board, the new board wants to see done. So I don't want to formalize these trainings so much that it seems like things have to stay the same, because if that training is teaching the current way, we don't want, we're looking for something new. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Co-Chair Obi?
Yeah, no, great point by